Hello, everybody. Can I get your attention real quick? I'll try what the teachers do. We do this at all of our meetings as we go in three, two, or how is it? No count, just hands up. Okay, there we go. Confidence. Okay, first of all, thank you everyone for coming out tonight, highlighting the outstanding achievements of the students that we teach here. Our Litchfield learners is one of the most exciting things that we get to do. So we're just doing real quick. We're getting our live stream up and we will get started here in just a couple of minutes. So get ready. This is going to be exciting. I know I'm excited. I hope you all are as excited as I am. So thank you all for coming again.
It looks like we have our stuff ready to go. So if everyone is good to go, yes. Board members, we all ready? Awesome. Okay. Well then, thank you everybody for joining us. We have a very full house tonight. Today is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, and this is the regular governing board meeting for the Litchfield Elementary School District Governing Board. I hereby call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is going to be the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have a couple of friends that are going to come join us. We've got Julian Rodriguez and Matthew Beckett from Litchfield. If they could please come up front. Thank you. Please stand and join us.
Please stand up. Please join us and for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice job. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Next, we are going to take a moment of silent reflection. Okay. We were supposed to do recognitions next, but some of my board members said they'd rather us move it to the end of the meeting and have you guys stay for policies. No, just kidding. We're going to move on to recognitions and celebrations, and this will be led by our Executive Director, Nuanas.
Yes, the moment we've all been waiting for, at least I have, like I said. Good evening, Madam President, governing board members, Dr. Davidson, fellow cabinet members, our esteemed guests here present tonight and online. It is a true privilege to stand before you this evening to celebrate the exceptional accomplishments of our Litchfield learners. These students have excelled academically, achieving remarkable success on the AASA testing, and their dedication and perseverance deserve our highest praise. As we recognize their achievements, we also acknowledge that this level of student success could not be possible without the strong leadership of our principals, especially as we celebrate National Principals Month. Their vision and commitment, alongside the unwavering dedication of our teachers, have created an environment where students continue to thrive. These students have demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to their studies, setting a standard for academic excellence in our district. Their success is a reflection not only of their personal efforts, but also the ongoing support of their families, teachers, and the entire LESD 79 community. We are immensely proud of their accomplishments and know that their futures are filled with promise. These high achievers embody the very best that LESD 79 has to offer. We eagerly anticipate the continued positive impact they will make both academically and in their broader lives. Congratulations to each of these students. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. Now, as I read your names, please come forward and we will go by school. So if I could have the student's name that is read come forward, take a picture with President Zaidama and Dr. Davidson. Okay. And we're going to go by school alphabetical order. First up, from Barbara Roby Elementary, Vivian Lee. Okay. Ms. Acosta. Yes, principals, please come with your students. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. Huh? No, that's Barbara Roby right there. Okay. All right. All right. Next up from Belen Soto Elementary, we have Dominic Palmisano and Principal Courtney Frazier. We also have Kenton Makuma. Braxton Kupilas. Jax Worley. Imangali Imash Tokhtar. Okay, that is our Belen Soto contingency. Awesome. Great job, guys. Outstanding. All right. Next up, our outstanding students from Corte Sierra, led by Tanya Rodiger. We have Ryan Nelson. Danielle Quinn. Scott Brown. Alexis Lucas. Michaela Christopher Surin. And Joseph Milcreast. See those nice big smiles. Great. Nice job. Congratulations. Next, from Dreaming Summit Elementary, led by Principal Michelle Hill, we have Alan- Aliana Flowers. Thank you. Thank you for pulling me out of that one. And we also have Renan Kyle Mercado. Look at that smile, boy. Yeah, there we go. Now that's what I'm talking about right there. All right. All right. Congratulations, guys. Great job. Yes. All right. We move on to Litchfield Elementary. This is led by Principal Denise Lundberg. First up, Julian Rodriguez. Also, we have Matthew Beckett, return appearance. We have Sophia Faith. Next up, we have Palmer Holmes. And Blake Straighton. We also have Jackson Hood. And finally, from Litchfield, we have a couple more. We have Lincoln Counts. And finally, from Litchfield, we have Cody Jackson. Representing really big there, Principal Lundberg. Awesome job, guys. Okay, moving on to Mabel Pageant, led by Principal Leslie Willis. All right. We have Grant Roosevelt. And Ava Ramago. Okay. All right, Shirley Gibbs, big shout out, big part of helping these students achieve these high math scores. Congratulations. Nice job. Good job. Good job. All right. All right. Moving on to Palm Valley Elementary, led by Dr. Kimberly Hill. First up, we have Lincoln Guillen. We have Alma Donaso. We have Elizabeth Nichols. And Rylan Yogers Gritis. Awesome job. Awesome job.
The pictures will be online.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, Rancho Santa Fe Elementary, led by Principal Vanessa Zuniga. First up, we have Kylie Flores Arzeta. We have Cruz Calderon. We have Levi Martin. And last but not least, from Rancho Santa Fe, Charles Sett. Someone who's like shaking their hands and stuff like that too. Nice job. I tell you what, people, I can never have too many smiles. So that is outstanding. I just love seeing all that smiling and happiness up there. All right, we have Scott Libby Elementary, led by Principal Kara Fox. From Scott Libby, we have Michaela Shannon. Yes. Great job. Now, from Verano Elementary, led by Principal Sarah Fantasia, we have Calvin Brown. We have James Ress. From Verado Elementary, Brendan Graziani. And also from Verado Elementary, we have Marcelo Najea.
From last time.
Yes.
Last.
And also from Verado L, Elijah Pittman. Okay, we're rounding it out here now with Verado Heritage Elementary, led by Principal Meredith Noche. Okay, we have Reed Gibbs. Derek Carter. Emily Cuevas. Okay, you can smile, Emily. Okay, we have Rostin Orton. And Bethany Wen. There you go. Once again, how about another round of applause for all of our students, teachers, principals, and most of you all, you, our families, are that are integral in helping the student success of our Litchfield learners. All right. So I personally want to thank you all for coming out again. And to the students, thank you. Thank you for all you do. You are why we are here every single day to make sure that you succeed. And you are my and all of our inspiration. So thank you for all that you do.
We just like to thank all of you guys that came out tonight. It's really important to me that we're recognizing our students at our board meetings because that's why we're up here. That's why everybody that we employ works for our district, is to make sure that our students have a good school experience and that they're able to learn and grow. And so thank you guys for coming out. We are so appreciative of the partnership that you guys have with your schools and your teachers, because it takes all of us to see the success in our students. And we just hope that we get to see that continue and see these kids continue to grow and grow as they move on into the upper grades and eventually go to high school and move on in life. With that, we are going to take a 3-minute break probably. And on the way out, if you guys want to go grab a cookie or a water, there's treats over there. And again, if you guys want to stay, you're welcome to listen to all our fun policy stuff tonight. Otherwise, you all have a great night. Thank you. If we want to get everybody back towards their seats so we can get started and hopefully not be here all night would be super awesome. Okay, if we are ready to get going again, we'll get this meeting back on track. Next up would be public comment. We have no public comments tonight, so we're just going to move right past that to the adoption of agenda and approval of consent agenda. I'll go through and see if anyone has any items they wish to remove from consent. Ms. Clymer,
No, thank you.
Ms. Moran,
None, thank you.
Ms. Wallace,
Nope.
Mr. Owens.
No, thanks.
I don't either. That's really awesome. If someone would like to make a motion.
I make a motion, to approve the consent agenda as presented. I will second.
Having a first from Ms. Clymer and a second from Ms. Moran, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Clymer,
Yay.
Ms. Moran,
Yay.
Ms. Wallace,
Yay.
Mr. Owens.
Yay.
I'm also yay. Motion passes. Okay, moving on. Next, we're going to move on to action items, which the only one we have today is consideration and approval of the fiscal year 2024 annual financial report. This is going to be by our CFO, Vaughn.
Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Davidson, and community, thank you for joining me tonight to discuss and hopefully approve the district's annual financial report covering fiscal year 2024. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank my team for all of the hard work in closing out the fiscal year. Without their assistance, this certainly wouldn't be possible. Tonight's presentation aligns with the district's strategic keystone of resources. State statute requires that school districts have the annual financial report approved by their governing board and submitted to the Arizona Department of Education and Maricopa County Schools Superintendent by October 15th, which is today. By approving the annual financial report tonight, the district will be able to comply with these requirements. The format of the annual financial report is designed and published each year by the Arizona Auditor General's Office in coordination with the Arizona Department of Education to meet the statutory requirement. School districts are required to utilize the published forms. For the remainder of the presentation, I will review spending from select funds or holistically, and we'll begin with the Maintenance and Operations Fund. The Maintenance and Operations, or M&O Fund, supports daily operating costs, people, and programs. 81% of all spending in M&O was for salaries and benefits. Another 8% was for purchase services, which is primarily contracted employees to fill otherwise vacant positions. Utilities were 4% of M&O spending. The remainder of spending was made up of supplies and insurance costs. It's important to note that this fund includes within it the M&O override, which we'll be going into more detail tonight as well in a different presentation. As we review the year's financial results, it's always important to review how we performed in terms of operating a balanced budget. Should I pause? Okay. Maybe this one will be kinder to us. Okay. As we review the specifically focused on M&O, we ended the year with $607,000 more in recurring budget capacity generated for the year's operations than was spent. This is caused in large part by the spend down of ESSER, which allowed the district to reclassify approximately $900,000 of contracted staffing to the ESSER 3 grant that would have otherwise been in M&O. As we begin more work on the 2025 budget, we will continue to analyze projected spending against generated revenues or budget capacity to target a long-range balanced budget. The Classroom Site Fund was originally created due to a voter-approved sales tax for education in the early 2000s. After 20 years as a voter-approved initiative, the state legislature took action to continue the Classroom Site Fund as opposed to let it expire. The revenue districts receive from the Classroom Site Fund is driven by sales taxes the state collects related to the Classroom Site Fund, as well as certain state land trust transactions. The district utilizes the Classroom Site Fund for instructional salaries and benefits, including base pay increases, performance pay for classroom teachers, and instructional aids for schools. As a result, 100% of the Classroom Site Fund spending for fiscal year 2024 was on salaries and benefits. Each year during the budget process, we consider the balance in the Classroom Site Fund, along with the projected sales tax collections in the state to set Classroom Site Fund payments for the following year. To date, the goal with the Classroom Site Fund at Litchfield has been to maximize teacher compensation and supports while ensuring that any increases can be sustained into the future. We will be reevaluating the structure of compensation from the Classroom Site Fund during the 2025 budget process, as we do each year, keeping in mind the factors already mentioned, as well as other future plans which will impact the funding, including, for example, the repurposing of L. Thomas Heck. Current expenditures, as defined by the Arizona Auditor General's Office, includes expenditures from all funds for elementary and secondary education. They do not include capital, such as land and improvements, furniture, equipment and vehicles, community schools operations such as preschool and extended day programs, or certain facility usage costs. Based on these metrics, the district's instructional spending was 58%, while classroom spending was 71%, including instruction, instructional support, and student support. 10% of spending went to facilities maintenance, 4% to transportation, 5% to non-instructional spending, which is primarily food service operations, and 10% supported administration, which includes, for example, school level principals. The district's capital outlay fund supports purchases that are expected to last more than 1 year and can include items such as textbooks, library books, and instructional materials, computers, furniture and equipment, vehicles, and construction. In fiscal year 2024, the capital costs were primarily made up of the science adoption, which was $3.6 million. 2.6 million of the spending was the modular classrooms we added at Belen and Barado Elementary. 730,000 was for Syntegics. 500,000 was Chromebook replacements and replenishments for our student devices. 370,000 for the transportant system for our buses, which is the upgraded camera systems. 360,000 for large portable touchscreen televisions in classrooms, which will ultimately be replacing projectors. 335,000 for staff Apple laptop replacements. 195,000 for furniture district-wide. 152,000 for air conditioners in buses. and $100,000 for IT security improvements. We will be utilizing our capital resources into the future to augment any available bond funding to best meet the district's facility renovation, curriculum, technology, and equipment needs. The Adjacent Ways Fund is designed to support improvements adjacent to district property for the purposes of making district facilities accessible through items such as sidewalks and roadways, entries and exits. In 2024, we had no adjacent ways expenditures. However, we anticipate having adjacent ways expenditures in 2025 and in future years related to School 17, which is why I still wanted to talk about it at least briefly tonight. When considering capital projects, it's also important to consider what the district is able to raise from the School Facilities Oversight Board. The SFOB specifically provides funding for school districts to replace failed building components per the state's minimum adequacy standards for Arizona schools. In 2024, you can see how much we spent on the slide related to the SFB. The debt service fund is where the district makes payments, both principal and interest, on voter-approved bond issuance. In fiscal year 2024, the district made principal payments of $7.5 million and interest payments of about $1 million. The Food Service Fund shows the results of the nutritional program. Shown on the slide, you can see that 42% of spending is on salaries and benefits, and a similar amount is for supplies, including food. The remaining is other costs. Revenue for the food service program in 2024 was fairly stable compared to 2023. Expenditures are down a couple $100,000 due to a decrease in the indirect cost charged to the fund. The profitability of the food service fund continues to be a focus for the executive director of operations and myself, as well as the director of food service. You can see if you compare the total expenditures on the slide to revenue, the program is not making money, but with the balance that remains in the fund, we're okay for a while as we figure out how to address that. The Community Education Fund is where the district accounts for activities related to the preschool and extended day programs. In fiscal year 2024, the district's preschool program was supported in part by a Department of Economic Security grant, which provided about $880,000. This was a COVID-19 related grant that will be expiring and not continuing for fiscal year 2025. Expenditures for the Community Education Fund, salaries and benefits, which is just a unique comparison against the Food Service Fund, because we saw on the previous slide how much obviously food and other items drive cost in food service, whereas in community ed, it really is driven by salaries and benefits, which is more similar to what the district looks like as a whole. During our budget discussions, we always spend some amount of time discussing appropriate reserve levels into the future. This slide summarizes the district's financial reserves at the end of fiscal year 2024. We will discuss the district's financial reserves in more detail in November and later in the year as we get deeper into the budgeting process. However, we ended the fiscal year with about 4 months of an emergency fund or operating reserve. This is where we roughly expected to end the year and will help support the strategy we've continued to discuss around balancing our budget post-ESSER and across both the current year and next year, which we will continue to explore as we go into the budgeting process for fiscal year 2026. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have on the district's annual financial report for fiscal year 2024.
Mr. Owens, did you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions.
Ms. Moran?
I do have some questions. My first question is on slide 5, which is the M&O fund. So if I'm a teacher and I say to the board, I would like to make more money, I would like to have a more competitive salary. And I look at this and I say, okay, well, the district budgeted to spend 95 million, but they only spent 83.5 million. Why aren't they spending all of their budget?
Yeah.
Can you explain to me the difference?
Can I explain it using the next slide?
Yes.
Okay. So really, school districts have some legal reasons to want to budget the entirety of all the resources available to them. It gets into the weeds of the aggregate expenditure limit and how the state would pull back funding if that was ever allowed to not be met. But when you're looking at if we're spending all the resources we reasonably and responsibly could year after year, this is actually why I show this slide that we have in front of us, the M&O revenues versus expenditures, because the total budget amount that you see on the M&O slide includes all of the reserves that we have that are in M&O. And so we may be able to spend that as a one-time use of resources, but it would not be prudent to have raises, as an example, be supported by those revenues, because once it's spent, it's gone. I don't have a recurring revenue stream for that difference. That's what this slide is trying to show, that really we spent all but $600,000 of what I would consider our reoccurring M&O resources. Now, you'll recall when I presented this slide, I also made the comment that the reason it's such a large positive number is only because we were able to shift $900,000 of contracted, primarily special ed costs to ESSER 3. That's a one-time instance where I'm going to be able to do that because the grant is finished. And so assuming we made no changes in 2025, which we all know that's not the case, you could subtract that 900,000 and say, if ESSER wasn't supporting us, we would have expected that we would have overspent our recurring M&O resources by 300,000 in 2024. Does that make sense?
Yes, that definitely makes sense. So because we had the ESSER funds and because we have to determine our budget so far in advance, we don't have a lot of flexibility. And correct me if I'm wrong here. So by the time you knew this $600,000 was going to be excess, if you will, we don't have a lot of flexibility on spending it before the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
Okay. So then we just take it and we say, okay, this is where we ended up the year. And we know that we can potentially spend some of that, in the next fiscal year, or we would expect to, considering we won't have the one-time ESSER funds.
Right. Which is one of the reasons why, and as a board member who's been through several budget processes with me, that this will feel familiar to you, but it's why I always present a multi-year forecast to allow us to really look at the reserves over what I would call an intermediate period of time to really try to gauge how much or how little of the reserves we have available to spend. Because this simple analysis here might make you think, okay, we have $600,000 in 2026 where we might be able to spend that. But what we might find in November is that our budget cuts that we instituted for the current year were not sufficient. And so that $600,000 will simply help pay for the fact that we are slotted to overspend our reoccurring resources already for 2025 and may not be available for future spending that for us to plan for 2026.
Okay, thank you. My last question is on the classroom site fund. So when I look at that slide, I see that our total expenditures were about 8.1, 8.2 million, but it says the recurring revenues are closer to 8.8. So did we purposefully spend less than our reoccurring revenues, or why would we not want to max out to that 8.8 number?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things contributing to that. One, at the point at which we're setting compensation from the classroom site fund, it's still a guess on my part what the per pupil revenue will be from the state. And I did guess low, not intentionally. That's how it occurred. The other item is I did intentionally hold some money back because I was looking similar to what we do in M&O. I was looking further out and saying, well, I'm anticipating having to add a significant number of teachers as we repurpose LTH as an example. And I didn't want to increase the dollar amount and then not be able to support adding those additional staff members.
Okay, so for the classroom site fund, we basically take that money and then we divide it by the number of teachers.
That's actually what the state does. So we get classroom site fund money based on a certain dollar amount per student. And the state determines that dollar amount per student based on the sales tax and the sale of land from the trust. And so each year they publish a new dollar amount per student. But at the point in which we're doing our budgeting and setting compensation for the next year, that number is not finalized. And so CFOs all over the state are basically required to estimate what that will become to try to make a reasonable move, if that makes sense.
Okay, but the way that we divide it up is really based on the number of teachers. And so
Correct.
as you're saying, if we add a school,
Right.
repurpose a school, and we add teachers, we need to be looking at this not necessarily as a whole, but being able to divide that equally by the number of teachers. And if we add a significant number of teachers in one year, that could cause a dip, and we would rather keep that consistent over time.
Right, because I don't want to be in a situation, I'm not saying we ever would be because we're fairly careful about this, but I don't want to be in a situation where sales tax revenues in the state decline, our classroom site fund revenues decline, and I'm having to come to you during a budget process and ask you to cut compensation from this fund. And so, because what the spending out of this fund looked like, there's really four components, depending on how you want to look at it. There's base compensation for all teachers that come out of this. There's performance pay for all teachers that come out of this. And then each school gets 2 instructional aides, which are fully paid for by this fund. And so as we add schools, I have to hold money back to be able to provide those 2 instructional aides as an example, because it's part of our staffing model. And then as our number of teachers increase, I have to not only project out the revenues, but project out the number of teachers to estimate the costs out of this fund.
Okay, so as we're a growing district, it's a little trickier to budget this right down to the dollar. But once we get to a steady state or a steadier state, it'll be easier to utilize all the funds that are reoccurring and available.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing on this?
Yep.
The other consideration you have to think about when looking at the classroom site fund is actually time flow of money, cash flow, because we don't receive a majority of this funding until the end of the year, and we have to have the cash to be able to pay it. And so historically, Litchfield has tried to keep about a half of a year of expenses in fund balance in this fund. a year to a half a year to try to address that issue, just to make sure we have the cash on hand to pay it as well. So that's the other consideration when looking at the classroom site fund.
Ms. Clymer, did you have any questions or comments?
Just one quick question. I believe that you went through this on the slide number 8, the current expenditures by category, but I think that I missed it. So can you explain to me the students, the 9%, what does that represent?
Yeah, so all of category supports are different of support services.
Mhm.
And so, for example, student support is really, if you think about primarily those certified employees who aren't a classroom teacher, but are directly supporting students, versus
Okay.
the instructional staff support is similar. They're certified, primarily certified staff members who are directly supporting teachers, but not necessarily directly intervening with students. So for example, your instructional coach, who's primarily focused on supporting teachers, supporting students, as opposed to supporting students in the way such as your reading specialist. So your reading specialist might be a student support, and your instructional coach would be a instructional staff support.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
I have no questions. So if anybody would like to make a motion.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2024 annual financial report for attached memorandum as presented.
A
second.
Having a first from Mr. Owens and a second from Ms. Wallace, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Owens,
Yay.
Ms. Wallace,
Yay.
Ms. Moran,
Yay.
Ms. Clymer.
Yay.
I'm also a yay. Motion passes. Got that done just in time for you.
Still have to submit it, but that's all right.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. We're going to move along here so that we can get that done. Okay, we are going to move on next to the discussion items. The first item is going to be the 2022 override expenditure update. Next few things, we're just going to hear from our favorite CFO, Mr. Vaughn.
Favorite only, who's counting? Can I have my slides? Thank you. Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Davidson, colleagues and community, thank you for joining me tonight for a report out on the district's M&O override program for fiscal year 2024. Tonight's presentation aligns with the district's strategic keystone of resources. Arizona revised statute requires each school district that has an override program to hold a public meeting between September 1st and October 31st to provide an update of the programs supported through the override. Tonight's presentation is designed to meet that statutory requirement. The district's M&O override has to be renewed by voters periodically and is fully funded for a period of 5 years. If not renewed by voters, the M&O override begins to phase down in year 6 and year 7. Litchfield Elementary's override was last renewed by voters for the 2024 school year, actually. So the year I'm reporting out on was the first year of that 7-year period for our override renewal. This slide shows the usage of the override in fiscal year 2024 and projected usage in fiscal year 2025. As you can see on the slide, approximately 2.2 million was used for teacher and staff pay. 3.8 million was used for special area program staffing. 3.8 million was used to maintain staff for focused intervention. 967,000 was used for district nurses, and about 153,000 was used for athletics. The slide also shows projected usage during the fiscal year 2025. I don't know that I mentioned it well enough in the AFR presentation. Just to help connect these two together, the M&O override is actually just a subset of the M&O fund we've already talked about. And so this spending is part of that M&O slide we've already talked about. But I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into the usage for fiscal year 2024. And we'll do that in the next couple of slides. In fiscal year 2024, the override supported a majority of the compensation for 148.2 full-time equivalent positions and contributed at least partially to the compensation of 734 employees. To clarify the difference between these two figures, full-time equivalency counts part-time positions as only part of a position. For example, if you had two positions working 20 hours per week, those two positions combined would count as one full-time equivalent position. Whereas the second statistic looks at how many different people were compensated from the override at all. Next slide, please. The full-time equivalent positions paid for from the override include special area programming teachers and instructors focused on PE, music, art, media technology, and other special areas. Focused intervention, including instructional coaches, student advisors, and behavior supports and reading specialists. And the M&O override also supports 15 full-time equivalents for nurses, one at each of our primary schools. Next slide, please. The M&O override also provides substantial compensation to certain employee groups. The amounts on the slide are additional compensation these employees receive directly from the override. Our teachers receive $2,915 per year. Our related service providers, including occupational therapists, physical therapists, and psychologists and speech pathologists, receive between $3,930 and $4,710. Instructional coaches receive $2,971 per year. Student advisors receive $3,311. Behavior coaches receive $2,971, and reading specialists receive $2,915 per year. The differences between those dollar amounts in large part are driven by what calendar the employees are on. The amounts assist Litchfield in being competitive with surrounding districts. The remainder of the override was spent on athletic stipends, so athletic coaches, athletic supervisors for a sporting season, things like that. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Clymer, did you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you. It was good information. Just to say thank you to our community for year after year supporting this override. I think it's very clear here how much our employees need this support. And as a district, we rely on these additional funds. So thank you to our community for continuing to support us each time that we ask.
Ms. Moran?
I do have a question. So I believe on slide 5, we have these categories listed for how the override will be used, because this is the commitment that we made to the voters in the pamphlet when we said we're asking for this override. These are the things that it's going to help to fund. So why do we have 0 under recruit and retain effective teachers and staff? Because I know that's something that we want to do. So do we have future plans to allocate some money to that, or tell me more about that?
So in the past, when I've shown spending there, really it's been the cost of salary exceptions approved by the board. I could have done that analysis this year and chosen to say that some of the override was spent in these areas, but frankly, it's a more tasking analysis because it's not very easy to pull simply the cost of the additional compensation. And there was more spending in these areas than the override generated in funding. And so I didn't show spending in that area. But if the board would like to see spending in that area, I can show spending in that area. But there is not additional resources from the override to start a new initiative in that area, if that makes sense. We spend more in all of the areas listed than than the amounts I'm presenting here. I just can't say that we spent the override on those additional amounts because we only get so much override money.
Yes, understood. I guess I'm not sure if we should show something there because I know another thing that we've done is provide stipends for hard to fill positions and things like that. So I don't know if it would be appropriate to show those types of things here or if it's just more appropriate to keep things how they are. I certainly don't want to overly complicate anything, but I also think it's important to maintain the trust of our voters who have basically given us this money through their voting yes on the override, to make sure that we're following through with the things that we're doing. So I'll leave that to you to balance that part out, but it just could be a question in the future.
Mhm.
Ms. Wallace,
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Owens.
Yeah, I have no questions. I do think it's important, like Board Member Clymer mentioned, just to kind of go over this to reinforce to our voters, where their dollars are going in the classroom and particularly for teacher pay and retention and all those things. So thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate you doing this presentation for us and being able to share with our community what we are doing with the tax dollars that we receive. So thank you very much. We're going to move on now to the 2023 bond expenditure update. Mr. Vaughn, you again.
Right. Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Davidson, colleagues and community, thank you for joining me tonight for a report out on the district's bond program for fiscal year 2024. Tonight's presentation aligns with the district's strategic plan under the keystone of resources. Arizona revised statute requires each school district that has a bond program to hold a public meeting between September 1st and October 31st to provide an update of the programs supported through the bond programs. Tonight's presentation is designed to meet that statutory requirement. The district presently has two active bond programs, one with voter authorization from 2014 and one from 2023. We will first discuss the bond authorization from 2014. The 2014 bond authorization was for $35 million, and the districts finished selling those bonds in 2021. Through June 30th of 2024, the district has spent $32.7 million of the $35 million bonds issued. Next slide, please. The bond is broken up into multiple categories, including remodel of existing schools, new school construction, and remodel of administrative facilities. On this slide, you can see the spending of the bond in these categories through the end of last fiscal year. Of particular note on this slide is the installation of exterior cameras at Litchfield Elementary School. This work was completed as part of an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Litchfield Park, and those cameras served as a pilot for other cameras we may install at other locations in the district. Next slide, please. This slide shows the remaining bond categories, including operational and administrative construction and pupil transportation. Next slide. In 2024, the district's bond funds were primarily used to install the cameras at Litchfield Elementary, as previously stated, and buying a new small bus for the transportation fleet as shown on the slide. Go ahead. As a reminder, the district also received authorization to sell $100 million of bonds in 2023. To date, we have sold $30 million of those bonds. Through June 30th of 2024, the district has expended $454,000 of these bonds. Next slide. Similar to the 2014 bonds, the 2023 authorization is broken up into several spending categories, including safety and security, new school construction, technology and classroom equipment, and school buses and other student transportation vehicles. Through June 30th, all of the spending from the 2023 authorization has been on the planning and design of School 17. Next slide. This slide shows the remaining categories of repair and renovations to school buildings and the legal costs to issue the bonds in 2023. The next couple of slides will highlight some historical construction projects which were supported from non-bond funds. You can read through those at your leisure. I will jump to the slide that covers other construction projects in 2024, just for the sake of time. If you could skip a couple slides, you'll see there will be one that at the top.
Slide 17.
Thank you. During fiscal year 2024, construction began and significant progress was made, as you're aware, on the modular classroom additions to Belen Soto Elementary and Verado Elementary through capital funds. Significant investments were also made to improve fields at Palm Valley Elementary School as we started the transition, the campus towards a K-8 environment. Next slide, please. Looking forward, the district has several projects planned out for the remainder of the 2014 bond, such as playground equipment replacements at specific schools, fire alarm system replacements at specific schools, and others as listed on the slide. The 2023 bond authorization will continue to be focused on the construction of School 17 through the next bond sale currently planned for early January. From that sale, $2 million will become available for non-new school construction projects. At this time, we anticipate getting started on renovations of front offices and installations of vestibules at our schools using that money. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have on our bond programs.
Mr. Owens, did you have any questions?
I have no questions. Thanks.
Ms. Wallace?
I don't have any questions. I was just telling Mr. Owens here, I'm a little concerned that we spent that much money on the Palm Valley field renovations because they are not renovated well. I don't know what company we've used for that, but we're still not able to even use them.
The major change to that was those fields weren't set for baseball or softball, right? It was just dirt and grass because we opened it up to baseball and softball for the junior high kids. That just had to be laser leveled with the right infield mix. That's really where that cost comes from. It did not chase those Gophers away. You are correct. So that is a work in progress.
Ms. Moran?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to just acknowledge once again the appreciation that we have to our voters who approved these bond monies that are allowing us not only to build a new school, but to keep our existing schools safe, not only from the perspective of getting these vestibules that will increase safety for people coming onto campus, but keeping things like roofs that are in working order and AC units are in working order and all of those maintenance type things as well. So I appreciate the update and rest assured that we are putting those bond dollars to good use.
Ms. Clymer?
No questions. Thank you for the update. I just echo the sentiment. We are so grateful to have a community that supports us both in bonds and overrides. And I hope that presentations like this shows, number one, just how grateful we are because we couldn't have schools and safety enhancements and things like that. But also that we're using these dollars and stretching them year over year over year the best we possibly can. So anyway, thank you.
I don't have any questions either. I will say that the new like mini buses. One came and picked my daughter up towards the beginning of the school year, and it is so quiet. It came for a few days that literally we didn't hear the bus was coming. So usually that's how we know to open the door and go. And you cannot hear it. It's so quiet. So it was very nice to have the bus for like a week. Now we're back to the regular bus, which is actually good for us. But I do appreciate our community supporting us. And it is true that we could not do all these things that we do if it wasn't for the support of our community. We are lucky in this area that we are in, that we have a community that does continue to support us and know that we are using our dollars responsibly and we're doing the best we can for our students with everything that is given to us. We know some communities don't have that. So thank you to our community that keeps showing up for us when we need them to. Next, we're going to move on to the first read of the Trust Model Policy, Chapter 3, which is going to be all about financial management and procurement. And just an FYI, even though it has the whole entire chapter in there, we're only going to cover the first 50 pages tonight, and then we'll come back to the next section at the next meeting. But this is also going to be done by CFO Vaughn.
Would it be possible for a restroom break?
We are going to take a 3 to 5 minute break, and we'll be right back.
What? Oh. For the record, I don't think the clicker will be used for the rest of the night. Okay, all right. I guess I shouldn't say for the record in this environment. They might actually think I'm serious. What's that? Uh,
Are we ready to get moving along here? Awesome. We are going to get back to the first read of the Trust Model Policy, Chapter 3, which will be our financial stuff. CFO Vaughn will start us off.
all right. Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Davidson, colleagues and community, thank you for joining me tonight to discuss trust policies.
Trust
related-
policy, not the chronic absence analysis.
I don't actually have a presentation for this one. Related to finance and purchasing for fiscal year 2026. The first policy we have in the prepared items is policy 3-101, budget adoption, which outlines legal requirements around our budget requirements. The only option in this policy is the board allowing the district to overspend specific areas of the M&O budget, so long as total M&O budget is not overspent. This is how the district has been operating and how almost all districts do operate. The option that excludes this language would require the district to bring a budget revision anytime we wanted to spend, for example, more in contracted services than was budgeted, which is often the case as we're filling vacant positions budgeted for in salaries and benefits with contracted employees, which are budgeted separately. Are there any questions on this policy prior to us moving forward?
Ms. Clymer,
No, no questions.
Ms. Moran,
No.
Ms. Wallace,
No questions.
Mr. Owens.
No questions.
I have no questions.
All right. Procedure 3-101A and B simply outline legal requirements around the budget. Board policy 3-101 is an optional policy that the trust has written as it's recommended to be adopted by the Arizona Auditor General's office related to fund balance and reserves. It is an optional policy, but I have updated the policy to reflect what has been district practice during my tenure as Chief Financial Officer. This policy outlines targets for financial reserves and fund balance. The generic policy from the trust did not include language around what steps the district should take if there was excess reserves, only if the reserves got under targeted amounts. And so I've added that language, which directs administration to review fund balance from a multi-term perspective and explore options for the spend down of the fund balance in a sustainable way, not to create long-term structural imbalances to the budget or temporarily add items that would have a substantial negative impact on students if it were discontinued. Are there any questions on this policy or even discussion on if we want to adopt such a policy before we move forward.
Mr. Owens? Any questions or thoughts?
I was looking at the wrong, I was trying to find that. Can you
Okay.
come back
Yep,
to me?
Ms. Wallace?
No questions.
Ms. Moran?
I am all for taking the recommendations of the Auditor General's office. And I really do appreciate the additional clarification that you added based on how we operate and making this specific to our district. So if and when, God forbid, you were to move on, we would still have consistent policies in this area.
Ms. Clymer?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Owens, did you find it or have any
Yeah,
questions?
good, thanks.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I agree. Let's
It is
follow what you-
also just interesting to note that when we sent these policies in for legal review, the attorney actually asked if they could use some of the language that you'll see in red in the various policies to assist other districts in updating the policies. So your feedback is consistent with what we've gotten from legal as well. So thank you.
No problem.
All right. Policy 3-102 and related board procedures A through E include legal requirements around bank accounts and other banking needs, as well as cash control procedures. No revisions were made or options provided by the trust. Policy 3-103 covers expenses and payroll based on legal requirements. The first option in this section is under procedure 3-103B around employee reimbursements. The trust default options allow districts to choose to require receipts for reimbursements or not to. I have proposed to require receipts, but provide an avenue to still reimburse if a receipt is lost or unavailable via a form or acknowledgement that reimbursement for unallowable costs such as alcohol are not being requested. Procedure 3013C and D include procedures around how ordering and receiving work, as well as district credit cards. These are all legally driven requirements and no options were selected or revisions made. I meant to pause at the employee reimbursement option. Is there any commentary around that?
Ms. Clymer, anything on that section?
I don't have any issue overall with the reimbursement. I mean, I think life happens, so I understand that there might be a lot, but what is the criteria, right? I mean, we can't just say you just fill out this form and promise us you didn't do this, and then every time you don't have to turn it in. So what's the communication around this, I guess, which is our expectation is you're to do this. When there is an outlying situation, you will do Y, would be my guess.
Right. I mean, the training would be receipts are required. The exception would honestly not be trained. It would be, we've come into an exception. We have the option to have some leeway.
Some flexibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Moran?
No additional comment.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions.
Mr. Owens?
I'm good, thanks.
I don't have any questions either, so.
All right. Procedure 3-103E include an election of the district's work week, as well as a continuation of the district's longtime practice to pay overtime versus offering comp time to hourly employees who exceed the standard 40-hour work week. We believe this practice is in the best interest of our hourly staff, and so we do recommend continuing it. Policy 3-104 and 105 cover legal requirements around property control or management of capital assets, including disposals. These policies are driven by legal requirements and have no options or revisions that were made. Are there any questions on these prior to us moving forward?
Mr. Owens?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions.
Ms. Moran?
No questions.
Ms. Clymer?
None. Thank you.
I don't have any questions either.
All right. Policy 3-106 and 107 cover the district's ability to apply for grants and accept donations. These requirements are again driven by legal requirements, and no options were selected or revisions made in these policies. Policy 3-107 and procedures A through C cover financial accounting and reporting, which cover legal requirements such as the annual financial report presentation that I presented tonight. Procedures 3-107D cover student reporting done by our student information team. And procedures 3-107E cover the option of the district to have an instructional time model approved by the governing board. This has been used in the past to allow flexibility in meeting instructional time minute requirements in situations where students may not be able to attend school in person. Do we have any questions on those before we move on?
Ms. Clymer,
No, thank you.
Ms. Moran,
None, thank you.
Ms. Wallace,
No questions.
Mr. Owens,
No questions, thanks.
no questions.
All right. Policy 3-108 and procedure A cover legal requirements around financial audits the district must have conducted and certain financial posting requirements for our websites. No revisions have been made and no options were selected. Policy 3-109 covers procurement. We have added some language in this policy around defining the delegation of authority to the chief financial officer and director of purchasing. This delegation of authority allows the director of purchasing and chief financial officer to conduct certain administrative responsibilities around requests for bids and proposals already approved by the governing board, and award and use cooperative contracts and other awards with ratification by the board at the next board meeting. This is designed to ensure smooth operations and not having to wait until the next board meeting to utilize contracts available to the district. The language also limits entering into legal contracts to the chief financial officer, director of purchasing, and superintendent. This is a continuation of our practice and is best practice to ensure we're fully aware of all agreements the district is entering into. There is an option to increase the limit needing board approval for job order contracts to $2 million from the standard 1 million policy. Job order contracts tend to be used to complete many smaller construction projects under one procurement. For example, we might not, but we may choose to use this as a mechanism to complete the vestibule redesigns at our schools that we were talking about earlier. I'm actually recommending that we reject this option. It is standard practice to bring these approvals to the board, and we do not see any significant delay in operations from this that would outweigh the importance of the board approving a purchase that exceeds $1 million. Procedure 303-109B outlines contract provisions the district is legally required to include in contracts from both federal and state sources. The only revisions we made here was to assist the trust in outlining the federally required contract provisions by including 2 CFR 200 Appendix 2 via reference. The standard language that they had provided had only discussed state required contract provisions. And again, this is one of those additions that we made that the trust is hoping to push out to other districts. Procedure 3-109C and D cover special exemptions to procurement rules and different rules around construction procurement. These have not been modified from the trust-based recommendations and are driven by state law. And those are all of the policies that we'd like to cover in the first read tonight. Are there any comments or questions on any policies we didn't already get feedback on?
Ms. Clymer,
No additional questions. Thank you.
Ms. Moran,
My only comment is that I concur with the more conservative option with the 1 million versus 2 million. So I think that was a good call. Let me ask one other question, because I know we've had this in the past, although we don't anticipate there being any I think changes in job titles, but superintendent is pretty set in stone. But we've had people who have led our finance area, but have not been called CFO. So is there any hesitation that you have in putting, director of procurement or director of purchasing or, CFO job titles in here versus more generic terminology?
I suppose as someone who was once the executive director of finance, I suppose we could change it to well, that's actually the same words. I was going to say the chief financial.
Of finance?
Right. Because, or I suppose you might be able to say cabinet level. But when we made that change, just as an example, we also revised policy, very quickly to just update the title. So it doesn't give me too much pause. It would actually give me a little bit of pause to do the opposite in the instance that it might confuse someone. I hate to give a really mundane example, but every time I have to go to the DMV for the district, I actually have to bring the board policy that shows I'm authorized to enter into agreements with the district and my employee badge that matches the title. I would hate to get into an argument with the DMV official that I'm the chief financial officer, but not what we have in the policy, as an example.
Gotcha. Okay. I just recall updating policies strictly to update titles, which
Yes.
is not difficult to do. I
Right.
just didn't know if that's something that we had thought about. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all. Thank you.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions. I do not want to cause any problems at the DMV.
I
Mr.
appreciate that.
I'm good. Thank you. No
Mr. Owens? No
No questions,
questions?
thanks.
I have no questions. Thank you. This is a lot of stuff, but we got through really quickly. So I'm very excited because I thought we might be doing this a little longer tonight. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think it's good. I agree with the lesser amount. I think that's a good plan for us to do. I guess you don't need anything else from us about that tonight then? Awesome. Then we are going to move on to the first read of policy JHD, exclusions and exemptions from school attendance. This is going to be by Dr. Deuce.
Good evening, Madam President, governing board members. Tonight, I bring in the first read of the recommended changes for policy JHD, exclusions for school attendance. The specific change in this policy is changing the word certified to licensed. And the reason we recommend this change to this policy is based on this is the proper term for a qualified person to complete a chronic health condition form requiring the management of a long-term basis that will affect a student's regular attendance. I will stand for any questions.
Mr. Owens, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions.
Ms. Moran?
No questions.
Ms. Clymer?
No.
I don't have any questions. Thank you. Okay, next we are going to move on to chronic absenteeism analysis, and this is also going to be by Dr. Ducey.
Turn it on. Thank you, Madam President, governing board members, admin cabinet, and everyone that might be watching at home. Thank you for all being present for my chronic absence presentation. No? Okay, it's too late. Okay. All right, so I'm here tonight to present to you an analysis of the current reality of LESD 79's chronic absent rate. Using this analysis, I have a proposal of action steps that will, and also an opportunity for the board to give feedback on how LESD 79 can address the rise in chronic absent rate that we have seen as a district. This is actually aligned to all three of our keystones in that it helps our students to be ready. If our students aren't in attendance at school, we cannot use all our great talents and skills of our educators, as well as interventions to reach the students' goals. It impacts the resources that we use to reach student success, as well as building relationships with our students and their families. So why am I here today to present to you about chronic absence? Across the nation, rates of chronic absence have nearly doubled since pre-pandemic levels. Arizona is now one of the highest chronic absent rates in the country. Nearly 1 of 3 students is missing a significant amount of instructional learning time, and it negatively is impacting their school success. Research shows that chronic absenteeism makes it harder for students to develop proficient literacy, and specifically in third grade, and then achieve middle school and graduate from high school. Poor attendance also impacts educational engagement and hampers the executive functioning development of children. It's vital for students to be at school to learn those academic and social behaviors they need to learn. LESD 79 has observed a significant increase in chronic absent students compared to pre-pandemic data. Just as I shared, as a nation, we've also experienced this same trend. Chronic absenteeism has negatively impacted school ratings as well. Arizona uses chronic absent changes. So if you do not improve your chronic absence percentage, you will not get the points toward your letter grade. So how did I complete this analysis for you tonight that I'm here to present? I looked at the definition of chronic absenteeism as described by the Arizona Department of Ed, which is a student is chronically absent when they miss 10% or more of the school year, excused or unexcused. I also used the Hanover study that was part of the conscious discipline analysis that Hanover completed for us. They analyzed 10 years of our attendance data from 2010 to 2023. I also conducted an analysis of last year's data, 2023, 2024, and then also using resources from the Arizona Chronic Absent Task Force Resource Guide. So what did I learn from this analysis? What does the research say? Chronic absence in sixth grade is an early predictor of dropping out of high school. Evidence suggests that students are 7 times more likely to drop out if they're chronically absent, even just 1 year between grades 8 and 12. And then attendance habits are actually established for students in K-8. Chronic absence has been found to reduce the likelihood of post-secondary enrollment. Research shows that when chronic absences are high, it impacts an entire class, not just the student that's missing school. Chronic absent rates have been proven to add to teacher stress and burnout and put additional strain to continually deal and help students get caught up and maintain the rigor for the class to keep progressing. When a number of absent students increases in class, it's proven the likelihood other students will be absent also increases. The reason I share that research with you is to really establish a compelling purpose of why this should be a focus across our school sites. So nationally, there are some trends that I'd like to share. Every state in the country, as I shared, is experiencing a dramatic increase of too many students missing too much school. Chronic absence affects students' families from every economic level, ethnicity, type of community, urban, suburban, and rural. The harmful impacts of absenteeism, as well as documented as a nation. There's harmful impacts. And as a nation, chronic absent rates have doubled from 16% to 30% during the pandemic with minimal improvement according to the 2023-2024 data. As a state, we've also seen trends. I've shared this chart here to show you the trend from 2018 chronic absent rate as a state. And then obviously the gray bar there you can see is 2020. And then as you can see, we have also seen trends in Arizona increase. Again, stating, as I did before, that Arizona is now one of the top states for chronic absences. This is a chart that shows you by demographics showing you from the time span of 2018 to 2023. As I shared, Arizona uses chronic absent improvement to reward schools with points toward their letter grade. Too many absences by the end of third grade has impacted a student's trajectory of reading at grade level. There are positive impacts of attending school that if schools can increase their attendance by 1%, they're shown to increase students passing the Arizona Reading Assessment by 1.5%. Again, all of this is just to share with you the compelling purpose of why this is important to all of us. This is now LESD 79. So we'll take a look at what our trends are. This is the Hanover study that was completed that looked at our attendance data from 2010 until 2023, meaning 2012, 2013 school year to the 2022, 2023 school year. As you can see, significant increases in chronic absent rates for our LESD 79 students. The most significant grades impacted were middle school, 7th and 8th specifically. So I broke it down a little further so you can see these are the rates for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Now, the positive I will point out, as you can see from 2022 to 2023, it is getting lower. So that is a positive. We like to see it even lower, but we are seeing that it is going down. When I analyzed the 2023-2024 data, as you can see, we had 2,858 students that were chronically absent. We had 10,506 students enrolled K-8. That was 27%. So again, some positive news is that it is decreasing based on last year's data, but still significant to where it was pre-pandemic. I also analyzed how many students missed at least a month of school, and that was 2,280 students. So losing a whole month of education and impacting their overall success. Higher rates of chronic absenteeism is also, this is specific to LESD 79, students with 504 plans, students on free and reduced lunch, non-gifted students, special ed students, and Hispanic students. Students with at least one discipline incident and students with one suspension had higher rates of chronic absence compared to their peers, meaning that 45 to 51% of the students that were suspended were also chronically absent, not counting their suspended days. Students are still experiencing chronic absence, student learning gaps, and foundational skills as we move into the 24-25 school year. And this was seen through the ADE breakdown of how we can look at students and their growth based on last year's ASA, and we're able to see those students that were documented as chronically absent. So what's next? So to address this concern, social media campaign to raise awareness, importance, and impact of attending school, that actually has already been started. We're also joining a coalition that will start in January that will be a collaboration of several school districts to really raise the awareness of coming to school. A complete comprehensive analysis by site to determine specific needs of students and families. The research tells us the best way to address and get kids to school is to work with the families and figure out the obstacles standing in their way and work with those families where they're at to build their students' attendance. The analysis of our chronic health form process and documentation of school site training. As you just did your first read of the certified to licensed medical professional is really making sure that our families understand that if their child does have a chronic health condition that prevents them from coming to school, that we do have documentation for that. And that does help their student. And it also helps our school system that they're documented as chronically absent. Setting up Synergy to do auto reports to notify families to be informed of their child's attendance. We have the ability to do this in Synergy. We just need to build the format to be able to communicate. Many times families might not realize that their child is accumulating this many absences. So we want to make sure that we inform them and they know the impact. These are some examples of the social media campaign that the communication department has put together. Also establishing goals for identified sites and specific action steps for campuses by needs and trends. So each principal will be looking at their chronic absent data and determining what they need to do to address their student body based on their data. And then using the Arizona Chronic Absent Resource Guide as a tool to help build the capacity of their staff to help their students. Working with the community and business partner to support incentives. Some of this is actually already in place. We have several groups that are helping us put together incentives to reward classes and reward students that have positive attendance or growth in attendance. Family outreach to support families of high chronic absent student population. Monitor our progress of all these action steps. Keep analyzing our current rates to measure our impact. And then analyze our 24-25 data to determine if the impact of our action steps that we're trying to improve are making the difference. I'll stand for any questions.
Ms. Clymer, did you have any questions?
No specific questions. I think one suggestion, if I could make, when looking at the data that you presented, it looks like the majority of the absences that we're seeing are happening in the middle school level. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, correct? And more in 7th and 8th.
The highest rates of
Yes.
absenteeism is 6th, 7th, and 8th, but the other grades are also being impacted.
Okay. But when I look at the communications and like I look at the social media campaign, most of these are very young children. I understand that young children are really cute, right? And they are going to draw your attention and they're going to make you look at it. But if I'm the parent of an 8th grader, that speaks to me less when I'm seeing a 2nd grader or kindergartner, even though they're adorable, right? So maybe just trying to create additional materials that speak directly to that. I mean, I think we've seen many times over the years, you guys have brought to us just the things that work for younger students and their families are very different from a communication perspective to older kids. Parents allow middle school students to stay home on their own. So if they're sick or perceived to be sick, you're not going to leave a kindergartner home alone. So you make other arrangements. You would leave an 8th grader home alone. So I think we're battling different problems, right? In the lower grades and the upper grades. So creating some specialized communication to those older grades to, and maybe it is more of the transition to high school. I mean, there's so many things the high school has that we don't, right? I mean, graduation and they're in order to do certain things, you have to be there. So they have a leg up on us in terms of that. We don't have to do that so much in middle school. But anyway, that's my only suggestion there is I think all of our kids are super adorable, but I think just focusing on some of those older kids and either showing pictures of them and or using messaging that directly relates to older kids that is a little bit different than younger kids. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Ms. Moran?
Yes, I have a question on slide 22, which is the proposed action steps. We say that we're going to do a social media campaign, which we already have underway, to raise awareness, importance, and impact of attending school, as well as setting up these auto reports from Synergy. So my question is, do we think that parents aren't aware of their child's attendance record, or do we think that parents aren't aware of the importance of attendance, or both?
I believe it's both. And the auto reports also were a request from principals as far as being able to increase the communication so that parents are informed. When they do meet with parents, there are a percentage of parents that are shocked with how many absences their child has accumulated. So I think it is both the combination of how important it is to be at school and also where your child is at currently with their attendance.
Okay, so right now, life happens and you miss a day here and there, but obviously the definition of chronic absenteeism is essentially 2 days a month. But historically, we have not had a way to communicate that out to parents. We haven't consistently said, hey, reminder, your child's already on track to miss 25 days this year based on where we are now. But that's one of the things that we're trying to do.
The communication that has come from parents from the schools has been with the CUTS program. So this is more of a, hey, did you know this is where your kid's at with their absence versus using that more heavier hand of, hey, truancy, CUTS program, citation. So really, that's still an available tool, but it just hasn't proven very effective. So this is more of a collaboration to keep them informed stance.
Prior to COVID, we did have the automatic responses going home that
some people may have received, even in this room. When COVID happened, we did stop those because it was a very different time. We weren't wanting children to come to school if they were sick and please stay home. Those have not been started since. So some schools are still sending them, but it is being done by hand by a registrar sending them. And principals are asking that it become automatized again.
Okay. And then as part of that awareness campaign, are we publicizing what the current rules are for when you can come to school, when you shouldn't come to school? Because I think we have obviously put out different messaging over time on that. So do we have a consistent message for that?
That's a great point. So that's something we definitely need to consider.
Okay. The only other thing that I would say is that I personally would be interested in getting the site level data. So if you could put that on a Friday update for the board, that would be great.
Absolutely.
I'd love to be able to follow up on that when we go out to our school showcases this year. Other than that, I think this is.
I have it right now for 2 years.
Oh, okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Of course you do, which is awesome. So I think this was an excellent presentation. I like the data that was presented and the analysis, and I'm really glad that we're looking at this issue and that we're taking it head on and directly trying to address it, knowing that it is going to have a positive impact on student success overall. So I'm really interested to see, as you say, the data collection over time and the impact that this is going to have. So I don't have any additional specific ideas. I wish I did to solve this problem, but I'm really pleased with the direction that we're heading.
Thank you.
Ms. Wallace?
I knew it was a problem, and I have seen these numbers, but they are always very shocking to me that that's 1 in 3 is missing this much school. My question is, how, if you have a doctor's appointment or something for your child, at what point are they counted absent for the day? Like, is there a way we can put messaging out about when we schedule dentist appointments and doctor's appointments that would allow those students to not be marked absent for the day?
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. Thank you.
So
Yes.
what is the amount of time like that
It-
counts as a day?
You know, I'm going to have to research that for you. I know that there's different points, and maybe Jen Ben, you can help me with this. I don't know it off the top of my head. I know that there's a difference between half day and a full day, and depending on what time school starts, that cutoff might be different. So every campus is going to be a little different, but there is, when we report to the state, we report either a half day or a full day, but there is a
Right.
cutoff during the day for that school based on their school calendar. That way you understand it as well. Okay. Yeah, we can get that for you in the Friday update as well, what that cutoff. There's actually a little calculator that the attendance clerk uses.
Okay. Yeah, I knew there was some sort of cutoff. So if we even say, like, if you are making appointments, make sure you're at school within an hour and a half of starting, or only leaving an hour and a half early, or whatever that recommendation is.
Executive Director Stone and I were both just talking. We believe that it's 2.5 hours before or after. That would be a half day. So
Okay.
if you're 2.5 hours late, it would be a half day. Or if you leave 2.5 hours early, if it's beyond that, you're considered absent for the full day.
So if it was less than the 2.5 hours, it wouldn't be considered an absence at all.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's like important too, to like make sure parents are not taking their kids out and doing lunch and, other things. I know it's not going to drastically impact it, but even if it impacts it by a small
I'm just
amount.
going to say, I think we should look into that, because I'm pretty sure that I've talked to the office and been like, is my kid going to be counted absent? And they tell me it's a little bit closer to the end of the day than the 2.5 hours. So
I found out yesterday that Verado Elementary School is 11:03. 11:03. They leave after that. It doesn't count as an absence. So at least we know Verado.
Thank you.
okay, so yeah, if we can find that out, but I will follow up on that. And while I think that's good for parents to know, we really want them here because we want them in class. And even if they aren't counted as absent and it doesn't hurt our numbers, that's still hurting their learning because of how much we pack into a day for them. They're learning from the second they start till the second that they're leaving. We have our teachers saying, do not show up before the pickup time that you are scheduled for, because we are in our classroom until the minute we have to walk out. So I'm hoping that parents are going to want to have their kids there, and we should push more. Here's our early release. Remember, we have early release days every Wednesday. Here's our days that we're off from school, that kind of stuff to schedule their appointments. But
And obviously people try to do that, but everyone in the area has early release Wednesday. So like I can tell you, I was trying to make a dentist appointment, an orthodontist appointment for my son, and it was like 4 months before they had a Wednesday. So we made it for 4 o'clock. So we're trying, parents should, if you're being responsible, it's good to know at least what those numbers are.
Well, and it's important to remember that we're not asking students to never be absent. We're more focused on those students that are chronically absent and that's negatively impacting their academic success.
The parents that are trying to schedule their appointments, they're not the ones we're worried about, you're saying, that are like trying to make sure that they get it
Yes.
on the right time. Okay. Did you have any more questions, Ms. Wallace, or comments?
No, I think the more that we can incentivize kids, and especially like we were talking about the middle school that just like Danielle was saying, like they can stay home alone. So if they have more incentive to be in school through their own internal motivations, that will hopefully increase their attendance as well.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, these numbers are pretty wild. It's not comforting, but at least it's a national, issue. It's not just an LESD issue. So I love the steps that we're taking here. I feel like after this year, we're going to have an idea of where, whether or not they worked. We'll also hopefully have some best practices from our neighboring districts or, just in general throughout the country, because everyone's dealing with this. So I do love the idea of getting a text if your kid's, absent and saying, ding, absent number 7, absent number 8, right? Like reminding them that adds up. And so those are little things, but unfortunately, you're not going to get everybody because some people just it doesn't matter. And that's unfortunate, but the people who care or want to, they'll find a way to make those numbers work for them, I think. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I do appreciate this. And I think also with the social media stuff, to piggyback on what Ms. Clymer had said, we have our middle school kids that are on social media too. So they're looking at this stuff just like their parents are. So I do think it would be good of us to try to communicate with them through that mode as well. So I would like to see that in the future. Dr. Davidson.
President Zion, I just wanted to add a comment on this work that we're doing. Certainly, and you saw as Dr. Doozy presented, the data really shifted during the pandemic. And I think all of us have learned that even in the workplace, there's been a lot more flexibility for adults and for students. But I think what this data drives home to me, and I think on behalf of our team, there's nothing like being in front of a teacher. Our students can get access to their work. They can go to Google Classroom and see what was done, perhaps even watch a video. They have access to their assignments, but it just shows the power of that quality teacher and that time that is dedicated between student and teacher and learning. So that's something we really want to reinforce is please come to school. There's so much power when you're inside the classroom.
Go ahead.
And President Zedema also, and Board Member Clymer, I just wanted to expand a little bit on the social media campaign aspect on it. This was just the initial launch of it. We know that we have the higher numbers are in the middle school areas. But what we're shooting here for on this initial push was grabbing those that are going to still be with us for the next amount of years, that have a more longevity with us. Part of the coalition that we're working with is with the ASPRA community, where we are bonding together to have consistent messaging throughout all of the districts, consistent imagery, consistent messaging, so that the messages gets out there. What we're also doing here specifically is we're going to utilize, since the data shows that Hispanics are a large part of that, is we're going to be using some of our our communication generalist Yardley to send out specific messaging in Spanish as well to help get that awareness. Like, as we know that we can't address an issue until we make the people aware of it. So this initial push is just the awareness part. And then we can start getting into the stronger messaging of the why they need to be there and the importance of it.
Can I add one more thing? Actually, two things as I'm sitting here thinking about this and the conversation has continued. Just thinking specifically about one being the number of schools that we have that are expanding the Leader in Me program. Thinking about the characteristics that we are instilling in children through that program would seem to support being present at school. So I would be curious if we could do an analysis. I know we don't have a lot of years on a lot of schools that are doing that, but see if there's any differentiation. We could see if that might be a tool that would be effective in decreasing the chronic absenteeism. And then the second piece is kind of related to that, because for many years we did conscious discipline as our relationship building, and that, as we know, worked better in middle schools or in elementary schools in the K-5 model than it did in middle schools. And the thing that happens in middle school is you go from having in K-5, generally, some of our fifth grades do change teachers, but having that one teacher where you are missed in that classroom and you have that one-on-one relationship. And then in middle school, you don't have that. So I think it's easier to fall through the cracks. So I don't have a solution for that, but I feel like that's probably contributing to this issue, is students not feeling like they're missed or not having that relationship where they know that their presence is as valuable maybe as it once was. So just something to consider when we think about the different scenarios that these kids are facing.
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you need anything else from us?
No, thank you for your feedback,
Thank
and I'll
you so much.
definitely take this back to the team, and we're going to be talking about this at this week's lead with our leaders. So definitely thank you for your time tonight and the feedback.
Yes, thank you for putting this together. Okay, we are going to move on to reports now. We're going to start with Dr. Davidson.
All right. Thank you, President Zeidman. We just want to give a big welcome back to our staff and our students and families from fall break. Just in case people were wondering, we have about 2 months of quality instructional time before our next break. So really, per the conversation, please come to school and be ready to learn. We want to celebrate, just additionally celebrate, I guess, our Litchfield learners. Tonight was just a great example of how we're preparing our students to be content experts, and they definitely came out strong tonight. So that was great. On behalf of this particular week, we have National School Lunch Week. So Dr. Venable and her team, we appreciate your efforts, as well as it is distinguished, that's Carter trying to read his handwriting here, Digital Citizenship Week, and wanted to celebrate the efforts of Laura Combs and her team and all the messaging that is going out on really being safe and utilizing our computers appropriately. Want to highlight the efforts of our schools on behalf of our apple pie tours and our governing board showcases, the efforts of our team at White Tanks, LTH, Belen Soto, and Barbara Rovey, just having a great time seeing our staff and our students out there doing their work. Send a big congrats out to Luke Janke, Administrator of the Year from the Arizona Health and Physical Education Association. So congratulations to him and all the work that he does on behalf of our School 17 and LTH families and students. We have 2 A+ visits on behalf of our schools doing good work. Verado Middle School and Belen Soto will be visited this fall with hopes of becoming an A+ schools. And last but not least, it is a very important time in our community. It is only October 15th, but we do have an opportunity to ask our community, not for us necessarily, but to get out and vote, to demonstrate their citizenship and to get their voice heard. I know last year, we would have loved to have seen more of our own families get out and vote. Just want to highlight that, and that's an opportunity for our folks out there. So thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to reports from the governing board, and I'm going to start us off tonight. I was able to go to White Tanks. That was our first school showcase this year, which was great. I love going to White Tanks and meeting with their staff. Principal Martinez is amazing. He's doing great things at that campus. This is his 3rd year now, and you can see he's really gotten into his groove there, and he's really got a good system going, and everything is running really well there. So I appreciate all the work that he's done over the years to get to where we are now. And he started with us before we had our beautiful building that they're out now, and he's just moved all that stuff over and just continued to get it better and better every year. So thank you so much for having us out there. I did miss a little bit our interactions with the students. So for future campus things that we go to, I do like talking to the kids more. But I did get a lot of information. We got a lot. He had so much data for us. It was great. Also, I was able to volunteer at Rancho for Picture Day. Volunteering is such a great way to get into our schools, and I encourage anybody in our community that wants to see what's happening in our schools to find a way to volunteer. I like doing Picture Day. It's super fun. The kids are all dressed up and cute, except for the kids that have to come in right after their lunch. You feel bad and know that probably some of them are coming back for retakes, but we do our best to help them fix their hair. That happened to also fall on the Rock Your Schools Day for Rancho, and wow, the teachers did an amazing job of transforming all their classrooms and went all out. The teachers were dressed up in costumes and the kids had such a great day. So it was super fun to have Picture Day and that day happen all at the same time. I know a lot of our campuses did the Rock Your Schools Day, and I think it's such a fun way to make school fun and engaging, and to just show that learning doesn't have to just be sitting at our desks. Like, you can make it fun and unique, and the kids are excited to be there. So I love when they do room transformations. I think it's one of the funnest things to do in school. I did watch the special meeting since I wasn't able to attend our meeting in September, the special meeting where the board was able to approve the strategic plan. And I was really excited to see that that has moved forward. And now we have a strategic plan for the next 5 years. Special thank you to Danielle for running the meeting that day. I'm glad you were able to run it so smoothly and so quickly and efficiently. That the fastest meeting this year. I don't know. Maybe you want to replace me. I don't know. I also, a couple more things. I was able to have a conversation with our attorney who's handling a lawsuit for us. As many people know, the district was being sued by a former board member for many millions of dollars. And recently, after the last 3 years of this going on, we filed a motion for summary judgment, which we then found out on October 1st was granted to the district. So as of now, our motion for summary judgment was approved by the judge, and it means that the lawsuit is closed and it was found in our favor. This is great news for our district because a lot of time and work has gone into it and would continue to have to do so. So it is something I'm very happy to see that we can now kind of put to rest. So lastly, the most important thing that I did this last month was I received my ballot in the mail, as Dr. Davidson talked about, and made sure to go through it and research all the propositions because there's so many things on the ballot this year. And so really make sure anybody that's voting, and I hope everybody that can vote does their research and all of the things and make sure to get through both sheets, front and back, and make sure that you vote because this is the best way to use your voice. In a society that we're in right now where everybody's fighting everywhere, social media, in person, the news, you just don't know what is what anymore. The best way to use your voice is to vote. And so I encourage anybody and everybody that can vote to do so. If you got an early ballot in the mail, if you send it in, then people will stop texting you and calling you and sending you stuff and knocking on your door. So if you'd like all of that to stop, get your ballot done and in the mail as soon as possible. With that, I will let Ms. Wallace go next.
That was a lot of great things. I don't really have much to report on. It is National Principals Month, so just thank you to all of our amazing principals for all of the hard work that you do and your leadership in our schools. So I thank you for all of that. I don't have anything else to report on.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, not a lot. Attended the first showcase at White Tanks Learning Center. That was great. I missed it last year, so it was nice to see. I supported the book fair at Verado Elementary School. That was fun as a parent. Our first parent teacher conference. That was cool. Got to hear Principal Fantasia read to some of the kids. She's an excellent reader. That's good and reassuring. Other than that, not much. So thanks.
Ms. Moran?
Yes, I was able to attend the special meeting on September 24th. In addition, I also attended the White Tanks Learning Center School Showcase, which is always a treat to hear directly from staff and learn about the day-to-day and big picture challenges that they face and overcome. There is great work being done every day at White Tanks Learning Center and all across our district. In addition, I attended the Litchfield Educational Foundation meeting, and wow, this group of community volunteers has stepped up to elevate our foundation to the next level. The Pride Awards have been revamped and are going to be even better this year than they ever have been. They're giving out money to teachers in the form of mini grants and clearing their classroom supply lists, as well as this year they'll be offering scholarships to alumni that have promoted out of 8th grade and are hopefully entering their career education of choice, whether that's trade school or 2-year or 4-year college. So all of these things are having a positive impact and spreading joy across our schools and our community. So kudos and gratitude to the foundation board members for their dedication. In addition, in the past month, it was published that Arizona is 50th in the nation for public school funding. As former LESD board member Dr. Tanya Fitzer would say, the cream of the crop. This funding is set by our Arizona lawmakers down at the legislature. So if you aren't happy with being at the bottom of the barrel, use your voice by using your vote. Finally, I would like to elaborate and address the summary judgment that was granted on October 1st to the district by federal Judge Tucci in the civil lawsuit filed by former board member Honak. His allegations included violation of open meeting law, chilling his free speech First Amendment rights, perjury, defamation, invasion of privacy, and other claims that he estimated cost him $60 to $80 million in damages. But the claim that highlights to me the delusion former board member Honak operates under is the claim that we intentionally, quote unquote, intentionally inflicted emotional distress upon him. If you watch the meetings that led him to being prohibited from attending our meetings in person, it is clear that Mr. Honak was the only person intentionally inflicting emotional distress on anyone. His misinformation, twisted reality, and straight up not true claims in this lawsuit were recognized as such by the judge. And to quote Judge Tucci, again, quote, no reasonable juror could find otherwise. Our conduct, meaning from former board president Clymer, myself as former board president, and current board president Zaidama, was deemed appropriate and in line with our duties of office. Once again, I appreciate our justice system, due process, and the closing of this case. So in the sincere hope I never have to utter the name Honak again, I'll close with the lyrics from Kesha's song, Praying. You brought the flames and you put me through hell. I had to learn how to fight for myself. I'll just say this, I wish you farewell. I hope you're somewhere praying. I hope your soul is changing. I hope you find your peace.
Ms. Clymer.
All right, I'm going to stay on the train for White Tank Learning Center and our showcase. Thank you to Principal Martinez. It is one of my favorite places to be, and I know that as a parent, you're not supposed to have a favorite child, so I certainly don't have a favorite campus, but I will tell you I think the reason I feel that way is it's a lesser known campus within the district, but they are doing such big things, and the work they're doing there is transforming lives of kids that otherwise would be outsourced to other schools within the city or the state. And I'm so proud of us as a district that we continue to prioritize keeping kids within our district and utilizing the resources that we have to make sure they get the absolute best education, whether it's at White Tank Learning Center or at their home campus. So thank you to the staff and the instructional assistants, the principal, office manager, everybody there that works really hard as they do at every school campus. But I know they don't get quite as much praise. They don't have as many students there and they're not quite as well known, but always one of my favorite places to be. So thank you for inviting us and always making our visits enjoyable. I will also echo the National Principal
Appreciation Month. That's a mouthful. Thank you to all of our principals who just work tirelessly to make their campus great, to engage with students, to retain and recruit good teachers and good staff members. They have such an awesome job and they are responsible for so many things. So my sincere gratitude, and I hope that you get all the kudos you deserve this month from parents and students. And lastly, I didn't actually attend this on behalf of the governing board, but I think it's important to say I attended in my professional capacity. But last week, I was invited to a West Valley visioning session with Westmark. And this is a place where West Valley cities, towns, economic development directors, cultural partners, educational partners all come together and they discuss the future of the West Valley and how we're going to create a bustling economy or maintain our bustling economy, have a safe and happy place to live, and help us figure out what to do with all of this crazy growth we are experiencing. And the reason I bring it up here, number one, I think I love living in a place, in a community that cares about today, tomorrow, and 100 years from now. So all of that work is going on behind the scenes, and I love that. But most importantly, I think the word education was muttered no fewer than 25 times that day in terms of workforce development, how we're going to prepare our graduates, how important success in their post-secondary efforts are going to be, no matter what it is they're doing. And it got all the way back down to the elementary level in terms of us preparing students to go to high school and to want to be more than maybe the students before them. So anyway, I just think it was really interesting that not just in the public education sphere, but other people around us in the community recognize the work that we are doing here and recognize the significant impact it's going to make on the future of our West Valley community. So keep up the good work. Thank you very much. We have a lot more to do, but it seems like we are in the right place to make a significant impact. So thank you.
And lastly, reports from administrators. Thank you so much for sending those in. We appreciate getting to kind of keep up with what's going on at all our campuses and all our different departments. This is a great way for us to know. Again, community members, please look at them. This is also another great way to see what is happening in our district at every level. With that, I will entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Having a motion from Mr. Owens and a second from Ms. Wallace, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Owens.
Yay.
Ms. Wallace.
Yay.
Ms. Moran.
Yay.
Ms. Clymer.
Yay.
I am a yay. Motion passes. Thank you guys for joining us and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.